David, and good morning, everyone. 9 o'clock on Thursday, day 3. Amazing slot. So I was here exactly 3 years ago, end of February 2020, and I was here talking to merchant community about the opportunity for B2B on the supplier side. 3 weeks later, lockdown. People weren't able to access their banking systems. People weren't able to go to work. And access the transactional banking systems they used. T&E dropped off. I think global T&E dropped by about 90%. And so, that is a problem for an industry that their fees are pay as you go. The good news is B2B, these are supplier payments, supply chain payments, had a really resilient performance in 2020, and subsequently in 21 and 22, we've seen incredible growth. Today, I just wanted to go through some of the themes of 2023. There's a change in macroeconomic situation at the moment, and I wanted to try and outline what those changes mean for the card industry. And so, without further ado, let's see if we can get the right slide. Okay, so on this slide, we've got 3 items. The first one is at the bottom. I wanted to talk about inflation and interest rates. So, in the Eurozone and in the UK, interest rates have grown significantly. Beginning of last year, they were 0.1% in the UK, pretty close to 0 in the Eurozone. We're now at 4%, with the Eurozone catching up in terms of interest rates. What that does for the B2B market is make the business case for accepting payment by card stronger. So that if the cost of money is going up, then the being paid 45 or 60 days earlier in your invoice cycle makes that business case much stronger. So I was at a conference on Tuesday called CPI, and we had a conversation about, is now the best time in 15 years to accept payment by card for B2B payments? And I think it was a pretty resounding yes. So if you can get your supplier, or your customers to pay you on day 1 or day 2 of a 60-day invoice term, there's real value for that merchant service fee. It's not so good for issuers, by the way, because we have cost of funds. We're offering lines of credit to our buying customers, and so the cost of that money's gone up for us as well. But that takes us on to inflation. So where cost of funds is bad for issuers, inflation is good for issuers. If inflation's running at 10% and we've got a percentage of a fee, then obviously that's great news for our business. What we're seeing though with our customers though is inflation is not good, and lots of supply chain finance, lots of supply chain disruption in terms of fast food restaurants running out of chicken. You've got the PP issues a few years ago. We've got tankers going into the side of the Suez Canal. That creates ripples in the pond in terms of that supply chain, and there's a real emergence of this thing called buyer of choice. So in a reduced supply, what you're looking for is the buyers that are going to pay you on time, those that are going to respect the terms and conditions that you've agreed, those that give you volume. So the tables are starting to turn between the buyer always having the whip hand in terms of those negotiations, and the power is starting to move to some suppliers in some industries and supply chains. So that's definitely a theme that's emerging through this year. Good, and that takes us on to late payments, actually. With the increasing cost of cash, that focus between buyer and supplier, that conflict where buyers want to hold on to their money for as long as possible and suppliers want to be paid as soon as possible, is only going to get more acute. That friction is going to increase. And what we've seen is that starting to come through in terms of late payments. So late payments are bad for everyone. They're not just bad for the supplier that's waiting for their money. It's also bad for the buyer, because the buyer normally relies on their smaller players in their supply chain to bring innovation, and without those small suppliers, the service that our customers provide can be impacted. So late payments are bad for everyone. Across the European context, we've done some research, and typically, again, there's obviously lots of variance within each country, but the more northern you go in Europe, the better they are at paying. The compliance managers, late payments aren't really a thing. The further south you go into, some of the, southern European countries, companies are a lot more laissez-faire about how they pay their suppliers. So that's definitely a theme. In the UK, government identified late payments as a real problem. So they legislated back in 2018 to make sure that all large corporates actually present and make publicly available how they treat their suppliers. But that hasn't been enough to stop the decline, or the decline in late payments, which is an increase in late payments. So again, if you think about ESG, the G is governance, and late payments is a really big element of that G for a lot of our customers. Because if you're not on the prompt payment code in the UK, you can't bid on government contracts. So there's some very large organisations really struggling with those KPIs. And Cards has got an answer. Paying your suppliers by card allows the buyer to still get their 60 days, but the suppliers can be paid much earlier in their cycle, and the large corporate can actually report that those suppliers have been paid. Card is exclusive in terms of all those supply chain finance options as worded in the government legislation. So late payments is a real problem. As you can see, 3 out of 5 small businesses are suffering with late payments. There was a study by the Federation of Small Business in the UK. 50,000 small businesses are likely to go bust because of late payments. So this isn't just a bit of gamesmanship and trying to steal a few days here and there. There's real world implications for that. So card acceptance is a really good way to mitigate that. Then talk about market liquidity. So as costs rise, as the cost of money rises, small businesses are impacted quicker. Less well capitalized businesses, the cost of their borrowings goes up quicker, and their access to cash reduces at exactly the same time that large well capitalized companies are not, they're not paying their suppliers. So there's a real mismatch between large businesses and small businesses and their access to cash. What we're going to see through 23, 24 is an increase in insolvencies. The last 2 years have been pretty good. There's been a lot of government support. But the end of the zombie company, those that are just about able to pay the interest on their debts, there's going to be some insolvencies as those companies' interest rates increases. Their bills are going to increase, and that will push them, potentially out of business. So for small businesses or anyone that's accepting payment by card, again, the card rails gives you that the ability to offset or mitigate risk of insolvency. If you've accepted payment by card, it's the card issuer of your buyer, if they were to go insolvent, that would carry the impairment there. So just the schemes, both Visa and MasterCard and American Express, they've all got those chargeback rights. They've got that arbitrage between buyer and supplier all built in, just like the protections that you as a consumer receive. So what we're seeing again through this year and probably into next year is card acceptance is starting to be a collection tool. So rather than waiting for a 60-day term to get to 90 days and then phoning them up and say, oh, can you just pay me by card? Why not be paid 90 days earlier and be paid right at the beginning? So that's the theme. We're also seeing some embedded finance models. Smaller businesses not so much like Netflix, but embedded finance is that Netflix model where a card is placed within a piece of software, and as the services are due, they're just charged on a card base. We're starting to see that emerge into the smaller end of the SME market. And then finally, top-ups. So if I'm a large corporate offering another large corporate a line of credit, say a bank buying stationery, if we've bought £1 million worth of stationery, but our stationery provider doesn't want to give us any more money, then us paying them by card, having a £1 million credit limit on that card that we give to the stationery provider, means that the stationery company can sell £2 million worth of stationery to us and not limit that £1 million. So that's typically what we call top up. We're starting to see those themes emerge. Again, less about economics, but some of the sort of product innovation we're starting to see. We're seeing enhanced AR and AP functions. So on the AP side, we're seeing this API economy. We started it a couple of years ago, but that's really starting to accelerate. So our virtual cards integrated into platforms that our customers use and that we use ourselves. So Cooper, I've got Cooper Pay. Barclays uses that as a procure to pay system. So we've integrated our virtual card platform to that. We work with SAP Ariba, the largest global marketplace, $3.3 trillion of spend going through that marketplace last year, and we've accessed that via an API with virtual cards, so we can start to use that marketplace as like a pool of value that we can start to access. On the supplier side, we're getting straight through processing, so we're starting to see a bit more innovation on the supply side with PSPs like AdFlex and ITS and Boost, all doing great work. But my challenge to this room is, we're 9 o'clock on day 3. B2B payments in still seems like it's quite low down in the priority order. There are a lot of very creative entrepreneurial people in this room. Think about that B2B payments in experience and how you can adapt your business models, because the opportunity is absolutely vast. So challenge for each of you on a 9 o'clock presentation. Next is next generation of leaders. We're seeing a lot of youngsters, millennials, who are using mobile wallets. They're using one pay click in their e-commerce, and then they come into work and they're using antiquated procure to pay systems, 8 steps, 4 or 5 weeks to onboard a supplier, delays, horrendous looking user interfaces, and they're saying, we want better. So we're seeing millennials move into leadership positions. They're making choices to empower their colleagues to buy how they need to buy. So that's again a theme that you'll see in your business. Need for cash certainty, that talks about cash forecasting, again with the treasurers last week, big focus on keeping money in or collecting money quicker. Having card payments going out, if I'm making 1,000 payments, then I'm not getting 1,000 invoices to pay. I'm making 1,000 payments and they fall due at some point next month. I can have cash certainty and I can make sure my cash management business has the money in the account ready for that. On the DSO side, collecting money, it's really important that if I'm expecting one of my customers to pay me £5 million for CapEx expenditure, that £5 million arrives on the day that I expect it. Because if I've got confidence in that, then I can go and spend that money. I can invest in new machinery, plant, staff, breaking into new markets. I can become a more productive organisation. So again, that's important. And then fulfilment for your finance team. There is a war on talent in all industries, and accounts payable is no different. Doing routine, repetitive tasks day after day is soul destroying, and people are leaving those industries for more fulfilling work. Automating those steps is really important. So again, you can redeploy those people to do value-adding activities such as reporting, exception reporting, and looking for those fraud patterns. Okay. Very quickly, I'm going to rattle through these. Themes that are probably on the sort of 1 to 3 year horizon. First one is rise of unified networks. So unified networks, where B2B procurement or B2B supply chain is falling down, is the one-to-one nature of supplier enablement. We work with a buyer and they say, here, can you go and recruit these 300 suppliers for us? And we'll say, yes, no problem. We'll go and do that. As one-to-one, we're sending people out to speak to those organizations. It's not scalable. So one of the innovations in the market at the moment is MasterCard Track, which we've signed up for. That PR is out in the marketplace. There's no surprises there. But we see MasterCard Track as being almost like a supplier preference network. Suppliers can enroll into the network. They can say who they want to be paid by, when they want to be paid, how much they're prepared to pay, and that can change in different seasons. So as they come towards a reporting period, they might want their money quicker. So that's really important. And there's also on the buy side multiple payment rails. There's card to account, there's account to account, and supply chain finance, all in one platform, so the buyer can route the right transaction to the right payment rail based on that transaction characteristic, which might be size of transaction or number of transactions. Virtual cards. I don't want to teach anyone's mother to suck eggs. It's a phrase in the UK, but hopefully you're all familiar with what virtual cards are. The use cases are growing every day, and you can see from the numbers, they're expected to explode over the next few years. The key innovative part of virtual cards for us is we're starting to now put virtual cards into individuals' wallets, so your Apple Pays, for example. So what corporates like about virtual cards is they can pre-approve the spend. I want to go and spend £3,000 on something. Corporates want someone to have some oversight of that before I spend. So virtual cards gives you that. Once that transaction has been approved, it can go into my Apple Pay wallet and I can go and make that transaction using biometrics. So again, more use cases, more virtual cards being put into the platforms that our customers are using. Decentralization of finance, again, it's a threat. There's a huge amount of investment going into fintechs. So people like Cooper Pay, SAP Ariba, Xero, QuickBooks are all working very hard on their innovation and their virtual card plugins, because they see the use and convenience and the controls as being a real game changer for them. And finally, if you are thinking about rolling out a B2B program, what are the key characteristics? So the first one is know that there is issuer and acquirer. You need to understand the dynamics from the buyer and the supplier. If you're just an issuer focused on the buyer, then you're never going to, you're going to struggle to scale some of your programs. Equally, if you're just an acquirer looking at issuing, then you need to have an appreciation of both sides, because ultimately you're arbitrating between the value of the fees and the benefits that you get in terms of working capital. So that's me, Rob Tuckwell, and I'll be on the panel for questions later on. Thank you.